I'm originally from Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania. And so we're like 1,500 miles from there. I own a home here in town. I own my own home. I'm 33 and have part ownership in the store we're sitting in front of, the Tri-County Mercantile, which is the first grocery farm and ranch feed store in Chugwater in about 35 years. I moved to Wyoming about 6 years ago, and I was kind of looking for a method to live here, because I actually wanted to live here because it's a very agricultural based state, very low population density, so it's still in very traditional industry type of state. And then I lived in Cheyenne, and that was kind of a landing spot, and then I moved to Chugwater. Chugwater's the next town you hit from Cheyenne. It's 45 miles north. And so I got to Chugwater, was hanging out here, actually got introduced to ranching through some friends who are now friends, and learned to brand cattle and learned how to ride and saddle my horse and all of that kind of stuff. And so I'm pretty involved in that now.
Was there a driving force that said, hey, I want to go be a rancher?
No, not at all. If you asked me 8 years ago, I couldn't have told you. I might have known probably then I was going to move out west and rurally. I was very specific on I will not live in another suburban metro. So Colorado was off the list for the Front Range and just wasn't interested in the state. Wyoming is kind of, it's sort of the epitome of a flyover state, but not with the sparseness that you don't say in Iowa. It's like there's a town every 5-10 miles in Iowa, and kind of chiefly farming for the most part, where here sort of what people do and why and how they subsist is varied and different, and the weather is a massive component here. We get 60 to 80 mile an hour winds all winter long, and then we'll get beautiful days and then negative 20 degrees, and it's just it's constantly challenging you in different ways. And so I never would have imagined I'd be in ranching, but I think I knew being around agriculture, I'd at least be involved in some way. I didn't think I'd own cattle or a feed store and selling livestock equipment, but I guess I loved it enough. I just was drawn into it that way. And my thought was, I really liked the community, how it was and how it had been maybe in the 50s, the more I learned about it, and even further back, and thought, how do I support those traditional industries and make a town that I want to live in, like a lot of the towns I had visited that I enjoyed.
Sure.
So it was sort of like, it's a smaller town, so there's a chance that I can make investments here that if I lived in a bigger city, I just wouldn't have the finances or access to. So that's where the store came about. But yeah, 7, 8 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined I'd be right where I am now. I was living in suburban Philadelphia is essentially, it's like 30 miles outside it, but it's all just suburbs. Been suburbanized since the 30s. And your life there is you go to strip malls and indoor walking malls on Friday nights, and or you go down the shore into New Jersey and on the weekends, and it's kind of just a typical sort of do work, go to school, and have very small time for enjoying. But it's not a bad way to grow up, but not what I was looking for in life. And so I went to college for fine art photography at Temple University, Tyler School of Art.
Sure. Yep.
And from there, after going through college, my interest in photography was in what kind of an anthropology sort of perspective. So I would go around and visit places sort of candidly like this, and then just get to know people and make some pictures and then go to the next place. And one of those places was not Chugwater, but it was in Wyoming, kind of around Wyoming, and the high plains and the far-flung communities sort of stuck with me. And I just was like, I want to invest in that and everything that might come with it. So everything that might come with it is the store and other involvements I couldn't have imagined, but it's exactly what I enjoy how it turned out, is what I'd say.
A lot of people are afraid of the finances, right? They move to a town, or they don't even, they envision moving to a town, and they don't do it because they're like, well, how am I going to live?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? You don't have to share any, you could say.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine.
Take a bank loan and buy
yeah, so I didn't own a car before I moved to Wyoming, which I put off for as long as I could. I mean, I lived in Philadelphia and used the subway and all of that stuff, and when I lived in Cheyenne, I was like, I'm going to walk. And I moved in January, so I was walking when it was dark, an hour and a half to work down Lincoln Way, US 30. And pretty soon after, I had never thought about any kind of major purchases like a car, and I just started talking to coworkers. They're like, you should get a car. And I'm like, oh, I couldn't afford a car. And looking at different kinds of cars. Should I get a little $2,000 junker or a brand new whatever? And I ended up buying a brand new Subaru, and I did that because I knew I was going to use it until it died. And I have already now paid it off and am over 150,000 miles on it. In the first year, I had a little more freedom than I do now, so I put 50,000 miles on it the first year of living here, getting acquainted with the state and surrounding states. But once I did that, it was like, oh yeah, financing, that works, and you can do that, and they're reasonable payments, and then you see how much you make. And then when I started looking at a house, I originally was looking in Cheyenne. It wasn't where I wanted to live, but it was an option. And there's not really housing options in Chugwater, but just about the time I was looking to buy a home, a couple I knew here offered me their home in a private sale. And so I was able to run numbers and say, yeah, I can afford that. And so I have a mortgage on a home here. I was fortunate to buy it right in the 2020 time period. And hopefully that still picks up.
Fine. Yeah, you got
Oh, right, yeah. And so I was fortunate to buy in the 2020 time period and get an unrealistically low interest rate and all of that stuff. So that helps because whatever additional financing I have goes now into the store. I've bought other land in town where I built a corral to be used as an arena, or for anybody wanting to practice roping or sorting cattle, or maybe even selling livestock someday just at the other side of town. And so pretty much every time there's a margin that I can invest. Very typical traffic here. And instead of buying a nice car, I have the same car, and so I keep putting it into. I do have a ranch pickup. I've got a Ford Ranger. My friend is a mechanic and got one going and sold it to me at a good price. And so I do kind of have that option for, moving around a four-wheeler or livestock feeder equipment. But I'm kind of in a little place now where I've got some property in town and some automobiles and stuff, and like I said, none of that could have imagined 8 years ago. So it's
incredible.
Yeah, wacky.
Did you know people before moving here?
Not a single person. No family.
Friends in a small
Well, and I know small towns in general are tough to break into, but and people have told me here that this town would be particularly hard and we're kind of rough. But my opinion was, if you come to the town wanting to add to the town in a way that's familiar to the town and build on its history, and so I just poured into and I'm just naturally interested in the history of places, and I don't want to live anywhere because it's just I have a job or whatever. I want to live in the place intentionally, and I know a lot of people aren't fortunate to be able to do that. So for me to be able to kind of dictate my ability to live somewhere and work and survive, I wanted to be intentional about why I was living there and what I was doing. So it's getting involved in town. I just right away wanted to make sure, like, hey, I can show these people that I can wrestle a calf and brand one and sort cattle and get yelled at, but figure out how to do it the right way and kind of get acquainted with the community that way. So I think people had some respect that I had respect for their town, and so that probably helped. I really wish I could you'd have to interview all those people to find out. I'm sure that parts of my childhood influenced who I am and how I do things. There's little pieces of my childhood, like learning to ride a horse at my grandparents' cousin's farm and things like that maybe became useful, but I don't think I reflected them to say, oh, I want more of that in my life. It was maybe less about the romance of cowboy culture or anything. That I really didn't have any of that. It was just sort of like I had a really big interest in towns and American life and how American life used to be, and trying to make an investment because I did a lot of traveling around, and it was like, well, I can't just travel around and take. I have to invest into something if I really want something out of it. Something that did influence me is when I was younger, I was really into drawing for a long time, and that kind of went away. But I was big on drawing in school, and my grandparents introduced me to an artist, Andrew Wyeth, and his father, N.C. Wyeth, and from the Pennsylvania area, and kind of very sort of melancholic landscape, pastel-y landscapes and gray skies, and Wyoming looks a lot like that. So maybe there was some piece of me that had some romance for the type of landscape, and thinking, wow, there's this little town. There's actually an image I can think of in particular. It was called like The Auction or something by Andrew Wyeth. Okay. And he paints in this long format, like 16 by 9 or longer, like a movie format. And it's of a big rolling hill and sort of dried out grass like we have here now. And then down in the center of the image is an auction happening. It's sort of over the hill. You can't really see it. And you can see people standing around, and it's at a barn, and I'm assuming the barn and land is being auctioned off. But I liked the feel of, here's this big open rolling landscape, and here is sort of these humans existing against the misery of, it was a gray sky, and they've made their own little life and community and whatever, even if just for a moment during that auction. And in some way Chugwater reflects that. Is, you go, there's nothing for really 25 miles in every direction, if not further in some, and here you are, and you have a town, and people decide to live here and continue on. And so I was like, you know what, if I could be a part of something, this is a pretty good place to be. I've definitely had a very fortunate life. I mean, I had loving parents who were had decent means and could send me to school, and I went to a public school in Pennsylvania. It wasn't anything special, but now knowing people here and a lot of the people I've met across the country, it's hard for me to, in the context of anyone else, say that my life was really very hard at any point in time, because I've been so fortunate. I mean, after college, I lost my job in college because of the 2008 crisis, which extended after that, and they closed some retail stores. I worked at a camera store, and they closed, and I lost my job. And I think it was my sophomore year of college. I didn't have anywhere to live, so I was sleeping on the couch in the art school, and I had to go shower in the gym with the football players, which it's like little scrawny art student showering with the football players, and I'd walk like 6 blocks in the cold. And I mean, it wasn't fun, but I wasn't really like homeless. I mean, I just couldn't really get back to my parents way outside the city, but it was something I did to make it work. And then after college, I had a job working. It's like, you got a college degree, which I always laughed at. I'm like, art degree, what a joke, And I had a job, and I appreciate parts of it that way, not for the title of it, but I had a job working as a janitor, mopping floors in a gym on 12th Street in Philadelphia, and it was, cleaning toilets and stuff, and it's like, what am I doing? I lived 2 hours away, I had to commute by bus and train, middle of the night at 69th Street station, like, am I going to get robbed tonight, and that wasn't fun, and getting up early and going to bed late for minimum wage. But from there, I got another, kind of climbed the ladder and got a desk job, and then did a little better. And so I mean, those are my hardest times that I can think of, and I'm fortunate that it hasn't been worse. But I'm also fortunate for the experience to be able to say, I know a situation I don't want to be in, but I feel fortunate to be able to see other people's situations and try to learn from them without being in them.
Well said. If you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, let's say 23, 24, what's one thing you'd tell that person?
Take chances sooner. I feel like that's something anybody would say, but I think I was thinking about this move out here long before I did it. And I'm sort of an analyst by nature, so it's in what I do a lot, but I overanalyze in some of those cases to think, do I have enough money? Do I have a secure job? And I know there's people out there who jump on a train and end up wherever, and I would like to at least be somewhere in the middle of the two, and I'm better at it now, kind of saying when an opportunity comes up, don't let it go.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I really did, but you get into your 30s, and from your own perspective, it's like, now I'm old. Okay, we're not in our, you're in your teens, you go to high school and then college, and you're still basically a kid until you graduate college. And then it's like, okay, now I've got to go get a place of my own. There's no dorm system. Parents aren't really involved. And my parents really weren't at all, even kind of in college, and I paid my way through that. But it was just sort of, I lived in Philadelphia for 8 years. And while I appreciate it now at 33, looking back, going, I wish I had spent a lot of that time doing something else. And that's so easy to do in retrospect and say that, oh, those 8 years I didn't need all 8 years there to have any sort of influence in my life, but I feel like it did.
Sure.
I think it's just because I enjoy what I'm doing out here, and every day feels like I need more time. And already in my 30s, I feel like I'm running out of time.
Still incredibly young, man.
Well, it's good. Yeah.
It's all relative.
But that's what I take risks in everything. I mean, in my photography, it's like I want to do something that surprises me. I'm not looking to get in some gallery and, oh my gosh, look at that. I do it for my own interest, and I'm happy to share with people, but you need to push yourself by taking risks. And it's like, what is the worst outcome of this? Am I going to get yelled at? Am I going to blow a little bit of money, on something, and then maybe it was a bad choice? And it's like, if it isn't going to wreck me permanently, you just have a greater perspective on life as the decades roll over. So, yeah.
I'll throw one out there. You don't have to answer this or anything, but to people that live that kind of city life where they start to quantify the value of time by the amount of money that they make, because I guess we've probably both been there.
Yeah. A long time. Yeah.
If you could talk candidly to that kind of a person right now.
Well, and that would be my past self. I mean, I didn't necessarily buy into it as much as my peers, which is sort of what got me out of it. But I mean, I had a period in time where I was working in an office, wearing a tie and all that stuff, walking around on the streets, and your whole life was buying dinners out, and everything was buying out because it was all around and accessible. And it's almost like it was turning a non-sustainable method of living into a lifestyle where it's like people go into the city and they go to corner stores and maybe stay for a weekend. And it felt to me like a lot of people in my age in the 20s were turning that into like their whole life was that. And it was just very hard to think, how do I make investments that are bigger than daily purchases and buying property and stuff, especially since property values are high. Maybe in the 40s that was possible, but I would encourage people to, please come to Chugwater. We got plenty of land and opportunities. I mean, you could build a house here and be a landowner and rent and have a decent lifestyle and maybe even open a business and all of those things. And but there's a lot of towns like this across America that I think cities are great and they're important cultural, financial centers, but they are fed by places like this. And so if we don't have places like this creating people to go to those places or return from them, we're losing a big part of what remnants of America we like from the last century. So, I would just say, maybe come and see what it's about. Take the time. We get occasionally young people. We get a lot of tourists in our store, and occasionally we get young people who are looking for that and want to raise a family. They're usually more in their late 30s. We rarely see anyone who's in their 20s. Just rarely see anyone, because Google Maps, you put the pin in Yellowstone and you pass all these towns and you don't stop. But it's so hard for someone like that who's kind of on the go and looking forward to life to sit and take a minute and think, I could live here. Because even myself, when I was first visiting Cheyenne in 2016 from Philadelphia, and I wanted to be there, I was even thinking, could I live here? And it wasn't until I just went, I'm like, absolutely. Like, it has more than enough. And now I live in Chugwater where there's nothing, and that's enough. And I can get to Cheyenne and to Denver if I need to for those things. But the quality of life here and the things you experience on a daily basis aren't like anywhere else. So, I would just say, to someone kind of in that is, maybe this is for you, maybe that's for you, but it's so easy to get caught up in the metro sphere of the city and never break that bubble and be afraid. We get people who come in and they're timid to come into our store, like we're going to attack them, and it's like, just come inside. We're just like you.
Sure. Do you regret leaving the financial opportunity of that city life? Is that ever?
No.
Where are you?
No, I don't ever think about it. I don't ever think about, other than recalling family or like now my past or anything like that. I don't ever look back. And both as far as there's the things that I enjoyed about it, and I say I enjoyed them and I leave them there, and they have informed me now, but I don't go back and miss them, and I'm sure my family would go driven nuts, but I'm just like, you know what, I love my family, but I don't dwell on them and let them hold me back in that way. And I'm happy to see them and visit them and have them visit me, but no, I don't really think about it too much. I'm happy with where I am and just keep moving forward from that.
Really well said. The last question for you would be, what do you find that's most fun on a weekly basis or on a daily basis? How do you find fun in life?
Well, in Chugwater, and especially running the grocery store in town and general store, is you see the same people over and over again, and sometimes it drives you crazy. Some of them are retired and have nothing to do, and some of them are on their daily routine. We get kids who come down from school and get the regular candy bar every day. And kind of being able to run into the slice of everyone's life on the daily basis and get a sense of their life and their routine. And then we get the people who are just passing through. And so I didn't think by being stationary in a little town I would get to see America as much as I am missing going out and seeing it, because I'm now invested in this business for a while. And I'm still getting to see it because it's coming in my store. So on a daily basis, I like the little moments where we sit on the sidewalk and someone else smokes a cigarette and we sit there and talk and drink coffee, and those early mornings when it's you and just one person and what's going on today, or something happened. The stuff that I have never experienced in a major city. That's the stuff I like.
That's great, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was a great story.
You're welcome.